Are you familiar with this case at all?
Which case?
The case that brings us here today, that you're testifying in?
Yes.
Okay. In order to detain somebody, what do you have to have legally? Do you know?
I do not know the law legally.
Okay. Have you ever heard of something called a Terry search or a Terry frisk?
I have.
Okay, what is that?
I'm not going to say exactly. I don't know the law.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you this. A police officer is allowed to go over to anybody they want, demand to see ID, and if they refuse, they get to arrest them? Is that your testimony? Or detain them?
Can you say it one more time? I'm sorry.
Sure. Police officer goes over to somebody on the street. Let's call the person Mr. Plaintiff.
Okay.
Police officer goes to Mr. Plaintiff and says, hey, let me see your ID. And Mr. Plaintiff says, no. Is the officer now allowed to put Mr. Plaintiff in handcuffs and detain him?
I object. It's a hypothetical. It calls for speculation.
Yeah.
You can answer.
Okay. I do believe, yes, for officer safety, they do have the right to then, at least then do a pat-down of the person's outer garments for their safety.
Doesn't there have to be reasonable suspicion that the person committed a criminal offense or violated a law?
Because I don't know the law exactly.
You don't know when an officer is allowed to detain somebody? Was there any reasonable suspicion that she was committing a crime, yes or no?
We weren't sure what she was doing.
Okay, so if you don't know what somebody's doing, do you have reasonable suspicion that they're doing anything in particular?
No, but we have a reasonable response to ask what she was doing.
Right. Agreed. You could ask her what she's doing. And when she refuses to answer, are you now allowed to detain her?
Yes.
What's your rank?
Sergeant.
How long have you been a sergeant?
I have been a sergeant 10 years. It will just be coming up on
How long?
9.5 years.
How long have you been working for the Cook County Sheriff's Office as a law enforcement officer of some sort, in any capacity?
19 years and 10 months.
What are the Miranda rights?
Our Miranda rights? I don't have. I would have to read them to you from a pre-written.
Okay.
Well, I have a connection into the whole policing thing. I think a unique view of it. I was almost a cop.
Okay.
When I found out my second son was going to be born, and I was, kind of getting in this acting thing, I was going to stop playing and say, hey man, I got to get a job with benefits, and I was going to try to become the most exemplary police officer. And turns out I was called in to the supervisor's office where I had scored super high on this test and found out that they said, well, look, we're supposed to discard you now. I'm like, why? And he said, because your IQ is too high.
Wow.
And I'm like, what? You scored too high on the test. Despite the fact that I had, it showed that I had these, my instincts of protecting innocent, what I would put myself through to then, my IQ was too high, and that proved to them that I'm more susceptible for corruption. This is what they said.
Wow.
And I knew people and the higher ups in the police department, and I'm like, is this for real? And they said, yeah, unfortunately it is. And as years went on with cops, I'd ask them, is this in all of the police departments? Google it.
I've seen
it.
I've seen that before.
It's even now, still. If your IQ is too high, you can't become a cop because you are not programmable. They say that you're not going to be challenged by the job. I mean, this is personally like that. So when I see the dumb shit that's happening,
Yeah,
I'm
that
not surprised.
Yeah, that speaks volumes.
Because who you are as an individual, if you look at things a certain way, and then the peer pressure the glory shit that goes on, in the police department and that team mentality. You're taught to to think like a team and everything else.
Right,
so your way of thinking can easily be manipulated.
Right.
Because they've made sure that you are malleable to it. So, again, this is not some shit that I'm saying I'm just too smart. Well, they said it, not me.
Right.
So that goes into when you're sitting there going, how could a cop be I know how.
Right.
I wish they changed the damn criteria.
Right.
In October 2021, about 1,000 police officers attended a private police training conference in Atlantic City. What we found was really disturbing.
I'm not doing the guy who's recording you like, oh, I am not a citizen of the United States under Act 1206. Shut the up, right? Not to get pepper sprayed, tased, windows broken out, mother.
You start to get a picture of why cops behave the way they do when you see how they act behind closed doors and how they teach each other. Remember, the audience is interacting with all of this very positively, as far as I can tell.
They denigrated women and racial and ethnic minorities.
I don't want to hear those exit. I don't want to fucking die like 91 with hookers and cocaine around me, Why wouldn't that be your goal and objective? Like I'm on vacation in Colombia, money, and these girls are not as wealthy and they need to do things to make money.
You're trying to get a little booty, boom, nanny, boom, tang, whatever the hell you call it, okay? There's an approach. You don't walk up and say, hi, what's your name? How old are you? Sounds like casting couch, doesn't it?
They promoted a warrior mentality and glorified violence.
There's nothing else I'm good at. I love violence, I love fighting, I love shooting, and I fucking love freedom. It wasn't that long ago that we were drinking out of the skulls of our enemies. I'm gonna fucking murder this guy, then I'm gonna take his head, then I'm gonna cut his head in half, and then I'm gonna boil his skull, and then I'm gonna drink out of that skull.
The majority of the people in the world, 99% of them live in slavery today. So in 1863, via the Emancipation Proclamation, and I challenge you to go look in a law dictionary and look up the definition of emancipation and proclamation, and you will see that a proclamation is not a law. A proclamation is a public announcement by elected officials. It is not a law. So the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 did not set any slaves free. What it did was standardize slavery, the United States being the model for the standardization of slavery, that all of the other nations around the world, as they reduced their people from their sovereign capacity and forced them to join nation states, then they were able to issue statute, codes, ordinances, resolutions on them. And a statute, as in a state statute of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, is not a law. It is corporate policy of the corporation that calls itself the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Incorporated. All right? Now, a code is not a law. The United States codes, the code of the laws of the United States of America that are used in federal court and the Supreme Court, are not law. They are what they say they are. They are codes. Ordinances,